Hello everyone, welcome to the second session of the Flutter Bootcamp by Iris. I am Akshat from the Iris app team, and today we'll dive deep into the world of Flutter by exploring widgets, which are the core building blocks of any Flutter app. I hope you've had a chance to go through the first session where we covered the basics of Dart and Flutter. So in this session, we'll continue by understanding what widgets are and how they play an important role in Flutter development. So we'll go through some of the basic widgets and eventually code them out as well. Firstly, what are widgets? In Flutter, everything you see on the screen, from text to buttons, images, containers, everything is a widget. Widgets can be thought of as Lego blocks that come together to form the entire user interface. They allow us to structure, style, and organize the app's layout by nesting them within each other, and it gives us the flexibility to build complex UIs in a structured way. So we can, if you look at this diagram on the right side, we have a basic widget tree of an app. And if you look at it from here, a widget has three children and they further have widgets nested inside of them. So the whole app, the concept of any app in Flutter is to have a widget and then multiple widgets present inside, and they all come together to form a neat and a clean, presentable UI. Now, in Flutter, widgets are of mainly of two types, stateless and stateful widgets. Stateless widgets are the widgets that remain static throughout their life cycle. Once created, they don't change based on any user interaction or any updates. For example, if we have a text widget that displays a certain text, for example, hello world, that remains the same forever unless until the app is rebuilt. So it's always static despite any changes. Now, if you look at stateful widgets, then these widgets, as you can guess from the name, they do change dynamically based on user interaction or any updates in data. And for example, if you can think of a checkbox widget, automatically every time when you tap on the checkbox, its appearance should change. So when it's ticked and you tap on it, the tick should get removed. So that is an example of a stateful widget. Now let's see some of the basic widgets that are present in Flutter, from scaffold, container, text, buttons, app bar, etc. We'll go through each of these one by one. So first we have the scaffold widget. This forms the basic structure of most of our Flutter apps. It provides a layout where we can add an app bar and floating action button and certain options which look good on the UI. So it's forms a nice presentable. It's used to form a nice presentable UI on our app page. And the next one is a text widget, which is used to display a string, for example, hello world, and on the screen of your app, you can display whatever you want using the text widget. Then we have the container widget. The container widget can be thought of canvas on the screen where you can add colors and customize the widgets that are present inside the container widget. Uh, so when there's a child present in a container widget, what happens is the container will automatically expand and fill the required space to add the child present in it. And if there is no child inside a container, then it occupies the remaining space on the screen. Now, if you look at this diagram, this is a let's say this is a container and it will have a margin. So margin is the space outside to give certain spacing away from the in the screen away from the container, and a container can have, so this is what forms the container part. Margin is this out extra space that you can add around it. Border is the it's just the border around the container, so you can add certain color like a black color border around it. Then we have padding, which is to provide internal spacing for the child present in it. So if you have a child and you want a container around it, and you can add certain padding to so that the child doesn't stick directly to the container. Now this padding we'll see again later in there's another widget in Flutter where you can directly add padding and not be dependent on using container always just to add padding. So we look at that as well. So we have the row and column widgets. Now, whenever we want to display certain widgets in horizontally or vertically, we can use these widgets based on whatever our requirements are. And the row widget, of course, arranges the children horizontally, and the column widget arranges them vertically. So they can be used when you want to display multiple widgets side by side, or you want to stack them on one above the other. So in a row, this would be the main axis and this is the cross axis. So in a row, you can think of the x axis to be the main axis, and in column, the y axis becomes the main axis. Now, every time we use the row or column widget and we have multiple widgets that are to be displayed. So there is a chance that these widgets go beyond the screen size, or they go like, let's say we have a column, we want to display 20 widgets inside it. Then maybe the first 10 are visible and after that they go beyond the screen size, the available screen on the app. So in that case, we'll go through an overflow error. We can fix that using the expanded or flexible. So what this does is it occupies all the space present in the app and adjusts the widgets accordingly. And also you can have an internal scroll present inside the expanded, so it will automatically adjust the size of the widgets and provide a scrolling option. For example, you want to display multiple messages in your app, so you can use these widgets. Uh, Expanded takes up all the remaining space present on the screen and evenly distributes the space amongst the widgets. However, in flexible, you can adjust the space every widget should take, and you get more control in the flexible widget. So expanded widget can be is basically a shorthand of a flexible widget. Next, we have the app bar. App bar is an important widget that you will use very often. It, on almost every page of your app, you can have an app bar, which would be present on top of your screen, and it has multiple actions like you can have in leading, you can have a back button to go back to the previous page. Then this title for whatever title you want to have on your page. You can add other actions as well, certain buttons, maybe a refresh button to refresh the screen. And this is the flexible space present in between, and you can have a bottom bar as well using the app bar widget. So it makes it adds certain extra functionality to your app, which makes it look better, more polished, and it's a good widget to have on every page. Next, we have buttons. So buttons are widgets where you click on them and certain actions can be performed. Flutter has different kinds of buttons. For example, we have the drop down button, which is to select from multiple values in the form of a drop down. Then there are certain buttons. There's a text button, which is just to a button that has a text displayed on top. For example, a submit button, a button that says submit, and then you can add certain functionality for whatever you need. Uh, there are some buttons that you can that have certain a better UI to them. For example, elevated button where there's a certain elevation around the button which makes it look better in some cases. Then even the outline button has an outline around it. So another a better UI for a button. Then we have a floating action button, which is usually present at the bottom right of the screen, and it's a button that will be always be present on the screen. So even let's say you have a scrollable page, and while you're scrolling, that button will always be present on your bottom right. There's icon button, which is like you can have it's a button where you can display certain icon. For example, a small button with a plus icon on it to maybe add some new user, or whenever you have a functionality like that. Now, if I just click on one of these buttons, so I can see the basic documentation. So this is the website where you can visit to view the documentation of the different widgets that are present on in Flutter. So I want to show that as well. There is sample code provided. You can run it and see how your widget would look on the app as well. So this place you can explore the different widgets available. For example, column. So you can see uh, and there's documentation on what each widget does, and whatever how it would look when you would implement in your app, how to implement them, and all that. So you can check out this documentation as well for the different widgets, because there are much more widgets present in Flutter, not just these few widgets. So feel free to explore the different widgets that are present. So anyways, coming back, next we have the padding as I showed before here. So padding is just used to add certain extra space around the child widget. So let's say you have a hello world text, you want certain extra space around it to make your UI look more cleaner, then you can use this padding widget, and you can set the constraints for left, right, top, above, or top below, or you can add a common padding to all the four sides as well. Next, we have the list view widget. Um, so list view is widget that you can use to display multiple widgets in the form of arranged linearly, one after the other in a scrollable way. For example, you have multiple messages, you can form a scrollable list view and then display all the widgets on the screen. Then there is the uh, assets. So a Flutter app supports something called assets, and every app there's a file present, which is the pubspec.yaml file. On this file, you can add certain assets or resources, for example, images or JSON files that you want to use later in your code. So, for example, you want to add an image like background.png and display this image using an image widget later in your app. So you can add inside this pubspec.yaml file, you can in the assets part you can add the image that you have, and you can add the directory of the image over here. So if it's directly present in your directory, you can add it like this, and later in the when you're using the when you're writing the code for the app, you can add the image widget and directly use this background.png, and it will be fetched based on that. Now another interesting thing present in Flutter are the different Dart packages. So Flutter has an ecosystem where different developers contribute and keep adding multiple packages. So you don't always have to write all the code on your own. You can use some of these packages and improve the functionality of your app. So all of these packages can be viewed here. Like if I go here, here you can find a wide variety of all the available packages. For example, I want to add an image picker in my app. So you can see here there's a already a package present for this. So you copy this thing and you can add this in your pubspec.yaml file under dependencies and then use the different functions that are present for accessing this package. So again, on this website, you can see multiple packages that are available. You can explore. There are many packages, and so these are basically can be thought of certain modules that you can import and then use them. So now I hope you have understood and got an idea of some of these basic widgets in Flutter. There are many more widgets, so do check them out and explore some of these widgets. Think of certain use case that you have in mind and then see what kind of widget you would require for that. Then look for which widget is present in Flutter that handles your use case, and eventually you'll come across more and more widgets. And now, after covering some of these basic widgets and concepts, we can start building some simple apps. So let's move on to coding and see how we can implement these widgets in a Flutter app. So now let's try out coding some of these widgets. Let's begin with creating a basic Flutter app. So in VS, I'm here at VS Code, and in extensions, I would say add the Flutter extension and enable it. And so now we'll go here and create a new Flutter project. Let's name it session 2. So this is will create a basic template of a Flutter app, which is the counter app, as you would have seen in the first video. So we have a template generated of a counter app. Now to run this app, we can we can run it on any platform, a Windows app or a Android app. So from here, if I want to run it on a um, Android app, just for testing, so we launch it from here. Now there are two ways to run your app. Either click on this file anywhere and press F5 and it will run the app, and there'll be options to reload, refresh. Another way of doing it is going to the terminal and writing flutter run. Yeah, once this is connected, press flutter run. This will build the app on the, will build the APK that will run on the app. So as this is launching, this is the code of the basic app. If we look at it, there is basically again here you can see it extends stateless widget. So our whole app by default in the start is a stateless widget. It's not changing any state. And then later when we go down, we have our my home page, which is now a stateful widget. So if you see in the counter app, what we want is that there is a count of how many clicks is pressed. So at every click, the count should get incremented. So to change the value of that count that's getting displayed, we'll require a stateful widget. So we use the set state function, which will keep changing the counter every time the button is clicked. Now, this is the main widgets of the counter app, where we have the scaffold, which I mentioned in the PPT as well. So this will provide us a basic template where we can add an app bar. So we've added an app bar widget as well. And given I used a text widget to add the text to the app bar. Then there is center, which is just to add whatever widgets is inside it in the center of the screen that is present. And then there are two text widgets which are wrapped inside a column to display it one above the other. So you have pushed the button this many times, and the other one displays the counter. So this dollar sign is used to display the value of a variable inside a string. So when you do this dollar counter, it will display the value of the counter instead of this string as it is. Now, floating action button is another thing that is present inside the scaffold. So you can add an app bar as well as a floating action button, which is a button which will present on down on your right side. And even when you scroll down, that button will always be visible. So these are the basic widgets that are present, and so most of these have been covered in the default app as well. Now let's move on to coding some actual widgets that we saw one by one. Also before that, I'll show how this app looks as well. So now I've changed the code for my home page to make a basic stateless widget. We have the scaffold and a app bar, a center and text. So this is the app bar Flutter demo, and in the center of the screen we're displaying hello world. Now let's try to understand the concept of containers. Let's say I want to add the whole center inside a container. So what I'll do is over here, write container, and then I can do something like child and enter center in it, or directly if I want to do it, I can right click. There's something called refactor, or you can also press Control Shift R and then do something like wrap with container. So if I just press Control Shift R, choose wrap with container, I'll get this code. And now let's say I add a color to this, and I perform a hot reload, press a small r. Then what should happen is, since the container just colors all the space that is available to it, so below that there's center. So it occupies all the space that center would take, and center would take the whole screen, and this whole screen turns blue. Now, if we only want to just form a blue box around the hello world, then this would not be the way to do that. We should wrap the container inside the text widget. So if Control Shift R, wrap with container, and then if I add the color and perform hot reload, we see that the container only turns blue around the hello world part. And now if you just hover on the container part, you can see these are the different parameters that you can provide for modifying the different things. For example, the height, width, and you can give certain constraints. So there are many. You can add padding as well. So all these parameters can get added. You can modify your widgets based on your requirements. For example, let's say I give certain height, width. Now let's give some border, and if I give some padding, and so again padding is there to form some space around the this. So I'll just perform a hot reload. Padding will just give some extra space around hello world, so there'll be a space around it on all the sides, and we've set the height and width to be 200 each. So these are the different things. Also, let's say now there's the widget text, right? Text will have its own separate list of parameters. So let's say you want to add something like a text style to it. So you'll do style, text style, and in this you can add like font size, and sorry, it's SS capital, something like color, and then do a hot reload. So you can make the changes based on whatever you want. So just you have to hover through text. You can see all the different options you have. You can align it, you can choose its direction, and for container as well. So every widget that you use in Flutter, you can just hover through it, see what are the available parameters, and based on whatever you need, you can keep changing them. So that was about container. So coming back to this code of our my home page, if back to the stateless widget. Now let's try to understand row and columns. So if I just change this into a row, and now I want to display uh, let's say 3 buttons inside the row. So row takes the property of children and not child. It takes a list of widgets to display, and inside this we can have the different widgets. Let's add 3 elevated buttons. The elevated button by default requires 2 parameters, on pressed and child. On pressed is the function you want to run. For now we'll just leave this empty, and in child let's add a text widget to display the text, for example button 1, and let's add 3 more of them. So now if you run this, we should get 3 buttons in the form of a row here, and these are all elevated buttons. They don't have any functionality added yet. This is added through the on press functions. And now just to understand how much space is being covered, if I wrap this row inside, I press Ctrl Shift R, wrap it inside a container, and add a color, say colors dot red, and then refresh. So you can guess what would happen. Yeah, so the row occupies the entire space present on the in the row. So the whole thing gets red color, and so let's just add some more things. Let's say a height of 100. And now if you look at row, again there are multiple parameters. So let's see some of these parameters like main axis alignment and what main axis size does. So when we are considering row, our main axis would be the x-axis, and in the case of column, the main axis would be the y-axis, which is kind of intuitive, as a row would be uh, in the x-axis, and column would be all the elements are displayed in the y-axis. So let's say I want to change something like the main axis size. So I would make it, let's say main axis size dot min. So what this would do is take the minimum space required in the x-axis and leave the other part. So if I run this and show it to you, yeah, so it just takes up the required space. It does not, so now the container does not expand further. Another property would be the main axis alignment. Now in this there are multiple options, like center means in the align all the buttons and towards the center, end would align it towards the end. Space around would be to divide it equally. Let's like try this out. Yes. Now another thing would be, for example, now you want to, um, let's say instead of row, you can directly just change this into column, and what would happen is all these buttons would be displayed from top to down. Now we have set the height as 100, so when we add the 3 buttons, there is a high chance that this three buttons take up more space than the 100 height. So the container will actually overflow. So if we just run this, so we get the three buttons, but here you can see there's a bottom overflow error. To fix this, we had learned two widgets, which was flexible and expanded. So instead of container, if I just change this into like expanded, remove this, and then run this. So what expanded does is automatically expands to the required size of its child widgets. So once this is done, as you can see, it's properly the expanded takes up the space and the three buttons are spaced up equally. So that was about how rows, columns work and why do we need expanded or flexible? It is just when there's a chance that the size, you do not know the size. For example, there are multiple messages that you want to display endlessly. So you could use something like an expanded, flexible. Then there's another one like a single child scroll view where you have just one child and you want to add a scroll for all the widgets present inside it. Next, let's cover list view. List view is basically a widget that is used to display multiple widgets, one above the other, or either row wise or column wise. And these it automatically creates a scroll. So if there are multiple widgets that exceed the screen that go beyond the screen, then automatically it creates a scrollable list basically. So if we want to see how it works, let's create a list of items. Let's add some of the values and so inside center, let's create a list view builder. So this requires the item builder parameter. Inside this, we'll have a parameter for index. And firstly, the item count is the count of how many things are, how many widgets are to be displayed inside the list view builder. So we'll keep it items dot length, and which is the length of the list that we have. Then let's do return container. Let's add certain height, some color, and child inside that text, or just center child text and items index. So we've created a list view to display all of these values 1 to 7, and each of these value will be inside a container of certain height, green in color, and in the center of the container we'll display this text. So let's run and see how this looks. Yeah, so we have a scrollable widgets, 7 each. So list view builder is basically you want to display multiple widgets, but and it's a large value, so you don't need to individually hard code each of the values. You can directly use this and display multiple widgets. Here we can see that all the widgets are touching each other. So to fix that, we can add certain padding to make it look better. Padding, we have seen that the container has its own way of adding padding. It has a parameter, but let's try adding a padding using directly using the padding widget. So just go here, Control Shift R, and wrap with padding. It adds this. You can change the value based on how much ever you want. And let's reload this. So this gets updated. It looks much cleaner now. And we have a scrollable 7 widgets using list view. So this was about all the basic widgets that we covered in our PPT as well. After widgets, also I had told about this file pubspec.yaml. This is present by default in a Flutter app. If you look at it, this is generated in the start. And here we have the dependencies and dev dependencies. Here you can add all the packages that you packages along with their version numbers that you want to use in your app. From pub.dev, I had showed that you can install different packages. So whichever functions you want to use, just add the packages here, and in your terminal you can run flutter pub get, and uh, those packages will get added to your project, and then you can use the functions that you require. And after that, here we have the assets. So if you like uncomment this, this is how you can add assets. Whatever, if you have an images folder and these are your images, you can add them and then use them later. So do try this out. Try adding a image here, and try adding an image, and maybe explore the image widget and see how you can display this image in your app. So this is one of the things you can try after this session. Um, add a Go to this pubspec.yaml in your assets, add 2 3 images and try to display them using an image widget. Uh, that's it. So I hope you've gotten an idea of all the common widgets that we use in Flutter, and hope you enjoyed this session, and see you in the next one.